Good morning. Welcome to a new episode of the 6 a.m. Club where we start our day inspired. If you're liking the short inspirational episodes every Saturday, you can subscribe and get access to the 6 a.m. Club every day, Monday through Saturday on your phone every morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, let's jump into this week's quote, today's quote of the day. And this is one from one of my favorite authors and thought leaders, Stephen Covey. If you follow the Leading Yourself podcast, you know that the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is the book that has impacted my life the most. Maybe because it came just at the right time at the beginning of my career, and it really helped shaped who I am today as a person, as a leader. Um, of course, I'm not perfect, and I not always follow the 7 habits the way that I would like to, but they've been a tremendous influence in my life. So this quote from Dr. Covey today says, listen with the intent to understand, not the intent to reply. And this is a quote that personally speaks a lot to me because I need to remind myself of this very, very often. One of the things that I have been working on for many years is this topic precisely. I've gotten the feedback and I've become very aware that when I'm under stress, I tend to interrupt other people when they're talking. And that is because my brain goes faster than my mouth a lot of times. And as I'm listening to people talk, my brain can shut down. And I, by default, go to this mode of thinking through what is that I'm going to say next. And I get really impatient about getting my idea through. So if you can relate to this, I think you're going to love this quote as much as I do. Listen with the intent to understand, not the intent to reply. And this refers to really active and empathetic listening, really paying attention to what the other person is saying and really trying to understand their point of view and their perspective. I've been amazed time after time when I thought I have very clear what the solution to a particular problem was, or I had an idea in my mind, and I can be very strong willed. If you know me personally, you know this. I'm sure that you have seen me like this, but which is not my best self, by the way. But I can be very strong willed. I have strong opinions, and for me is a challenge, right? So I think this for me has been a matter of practicing and being intentional, taking the time to really take a pause and set intentions before I'm having a conversation, especially if I know that is going to be a conversation where I have a strong opinion and I know that I'm going to be listening to people that probably have a different opinion that I do. So every time that I face with that situation, I try to take a pause before that and remind of myself of this quote from Dr. Covey to listen with the intent to understand, not with intent to reply. And a lot of times I need to bite my tongue, and I learned a technique from my friend Scott Miller on his book, Management Mass to Leadership Success. Scott and I have talked about this, and we share this weakness, um, for a lack of a better word, on interrupting other people when they're speaking and being listening with intent to reply. And he shared with me something that has been very helpful and is very simple, and is this: when you find yourself, and you can feel it, I think that you feel it in your body when tension starts to arouse, when you're getting ready to reply and the other person is still talking, to count in your mind to 10, like literally count to 10. This also is very helpful when you're faced with that awkward silence. And what I've learned is that a lot of people need that silence to absorb, digest whatever thoughts are being shared. And creating those spaces of those noise free spaces, those silent spaces is very important. So counting to 10, or maybe for you is to 20, or maybe it's 5, I don't know. But for me, I just did do 10 because that's what Scott shared with me. But I count to 10, trying to count very slowly before I speak up. And that helps me, first of all, to calm down, right? Because a lot of times when I'm too quick to respond, a lot of times I'm reacting emotionally. So counting to 10 helps me make that pause to really think through what the words that are going to come out of my mouth and the way those words are going to come out, right? Because it's not only the words that you use, but how you say things. The how, a lot of times, is even more important than the what. So it allows that pause for me to reflect before I respond, and it also allows me to digest what the other person is saying and try to put myself in their shoes and understand their perspective and kind of think and question my own perspective. And this has been so powerful for me. I feel like I'm less of a reactive person. I'm less of an emotional responder. I feel like while I still sometimes interrupt people and I am still working with dealing with those awkward silences, I've made a ton of progress, and that is helping me to broaden my perspectives on topics, to be more thoughtful, and especially to show up in a better way for others, which for me is very important. So, here is my call to action for you today. I want you to, as you go through your day and you're having a conversation with someone, as you're listening to that person, try to ask yourself, am I listening to understand, or am I listening with the intent to reply? And be intentional about listening to understand. And sometimes in that understanding takes asking some clarifying questions and showing curiosity to know and learn more about the other person's point of view. So that is another technique that has been very helpful for me, is instead of responding immediately when I have that urge to reply and say yes but, right? That but kills it all. Start with a question or reframing the other person's points of view. It's also very helpful to deepening the understanding of what they're saying. So I would either say something like, okay, let me rephrase what I'm hearing just to make sure that I understood. Or I would ask a question. I'm like, that's a good point. What did you mean by X or Y? And that allows me extra time and an extra opportunity to really seek to understand. Okay, this episode is a little bit longer than usually the 6 a.m. episodes go, but you can tell I'm passionate about this topic. This is one that I'm personally working on. If you are too, I hope you found this episode helpful. If you know someone that can benefit from today's quote, I would appreciate if you share this podcast episode with them. With that, I hope you have an amazing day. I will see you here again next time for another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast.